Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Podcast, and I'm a little subdued. I'm still a little bit under the weather, especially after the last big week of happenings in and around college football and Ohio State football in particular. And that's why I've got my expert on the scene here, Boston. I know you know him as Austin. I know him as Boston Ward. Austin, by the way, welcome back from the Big Apple, my man.
Thank you. It was a busy weekend. This beat never stops, man.
You covered the Big Apple to the core. That's what I'd like to tell you right now. I know. I mean, when you've got two guys who are finalists for the Heisman Trophy, and, of course, Ohio State's guys were flying all over the country, or not all over the east part of the country this weekend. And, it's just awards week is a weird kind of situation. It's fun to watch from the outside, but, when you've got guys involved, man, especially you got to figure Justin Fields and Chase Young are pretty much at the end of the candle, aren't they?
They were exhausted by the time they got there, and then there's still everything you have to do for the Heisman, which two different media sessions, one on Friday, one on Saturday, getting dressed in these fancy suits, them taking them out on Times Square and trying to do all this other, a dinner on Friday night where they're meeting all these former winners, and the next day they're supposed to talk about what messages they got from what did Doug Flutie tell you about being a great quarterback and all this other stuff. It's a whirlwind for them, especially because, as you say, they'd just come from Atlanta, and Chase Young had won in Charlotte 2 days before that.
Yeah.
Charlotte to Atlanta to New York for him. I mean, it's a crazy week, and for Fields, where he's trying to also do some rehab on his knee, it's not like they're bringing a training staff with him, so he's got to keep up with that, find times where he can, go get on an exercise bike, he said, and he had, cold compacts and ice stuff in his room so he could try and get the knee right so he can get rid of the knee brace. Like, there's not even a lot of time for that.
Yeah.
And it's they've earned the attention, and they're obviously high-achieving individuals, so they can handle it. But, man, by Saturday night, they're just ready to, get done with that, get a little bit of time off, and get back to getting ready for the Fiesta Bowl.
Hey, let's hit it real quick now. Of course, we know Joe Burrow almost like he's a little cousin or something.
Right.
And, I had Jim Burrow on, his dad, after LSU's win over at Texas, which I thought really propelled Joe Burrow into the Heisman race, basically put him in first place. Now who's going to catch him? Well, nobody caught him and stuff, but just, I don't know. I was blown away by his acceptance speech. It was no surprise that Joe Burrow won the Heisman Trophy, but his acceptance speech and the magnanimous gestures he made toward Ohio State, when a lot of people have written stories about him over the last year, especially about, basically portraying as Ohio State kicking him out the back door and all this stuff, which was not the way it went down.
Not even close.
Just how impressed were you with Joe Burrow being there live, so to speak, and taking it all in?
It was neat. For me to talk to him for the first time in 2 years since he left. It's hard. It's not like we're going to fly down to Baton Rouge and get some updates about him leaving. So that was neat for me, and I'm sure it wasn't the most fun thing in the world to talk about breaking his hand and everything that changed that there for him. But he was gracious in every setting, and then that speech was I think unforgettable. And for those of us you've known him a lot longer than I have. But, growing up and everything else in Athens, it's not a surprise to people who've covered him. He's as smart as they come, great sense of humor, but also, an emotional guy, wears it on his sleeve for the good, usually the good and sometimes the bad, but on Saturday night it was certainly positive. From the Ohio State perspective, they didn't do anything to try and claim that as a win. It's not like they're putting a replica of the trophy in the Woody because,
or maybe one leg of it.
Yeah, because he has a degree. They didn't try to beat their chest over that one bit, but Joe Burrow gave them the credit. And Mickey Marotti was there, Ryan Day was there. Marotti, I think, obviously he's closer with that strength coach. The 3 years of helping develop him. When he showed up at Ohio State, he was not ready to be a Heisman winner. When he left, I still don't think he was. So LSU deserves a lot of credit for that. But the physical development and the credit he gave, even in the speech repeatedly to Ohio State, that meant a lot. I talked to Ryan Day really briefly before he got into a black limo van to take them back to the airport and come back to Columbus, and it touched him. It was a special night for Ohio State. Certainly it was for Joe Burrow, but 3 out of the top 6 and then half of a little bit of a claim to the winner.
Yeah, you and I touched on this last week when we were talking, and I predicted that the order was going to be Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Chase Young because of the shaving effect that was Justin Fields, Chase Young, and J.K. Dobbins. And, but Jalen Hurts barely beat Justin Fields anyway for second place. Now, it was a distant second. It's kind of like Secretariat in the Belmont Stakes.
I don't know who finished second in that race.
Exactly. I'm not sure there were any other horses in that race. But I digress. The bottom line is, they took you gotta figure they took away from each other a little bit in that regard. But it's still what an honor for Justin Fields and Chase Young to make the top four. Chase Young, a defensive lineman, one of only 9 who've ever been invited to the final, on the final list and stuff. But just what's your take? Like mine was that there would be a little bit of a cancel out each other to a certain extent.
Yeah, I thought that the toughest guy or the man out there would be J.K. Dobbins, and that I still kind of thought Fields and Young would both be on a number of ballots as second and third. You nailed it with Hurts. I didn't. In my mind, I'd kind of ruled him out for several weeks, especially after that loss to Kansas State and the turnovers he had in big games. But whatever. I mean, the tribute to Ohio State there is the first program ever with an offensive guy and a defensive guy in New York. And you look at the first place votes. If those had been the deciding factor, Chase Young had more than Hurts and Fields there.
Yeah,
a pretty remarkable achievement there. Even as you said, if it's way back, I think the number was 20 for Chase Young in first place. Doesn't even come close to Joe Burrow. But I look at some of these ballots, and it's just weird because when I was talking about J.K., he's obviously the third in line for Ohio State players, finished that way. But he was also hurt by people that continue to put Jonathan Taylor above him. And that could have changed this whole vote around too.
He has yet another chip to put on his shoulder.
So I'm not going to get too worked up over it. But as you said, I mean, these guys don't like losing.
Yeah.
Chase Young, I don't think had any expectation when I talked to him that he would win. He was really happy to be there. It was not a goal, he said, that he wrote down with Coach Jay when he arrived on campus, Larry Johnson.
Well, what defensive player would?
How could you? So that was all gravy for him. And I think Justin Fields was kind of okay with it because he's now expecting that he'll be back next year. But you're talking about all three of those guys, but especially J.K.
Yeah.
They will want to prove, especially if they get on the same field with Joe Burrow in New Orleans.
Yeah. The interesting thing is Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa probably were the top two headed into the season, and neither one of them were there, obviously. But
somehow Tua still got a first-place vote. That wasn't you, was it?
No, it was not me. Matter of fact, I'll tell you my ballot now.
Right,
I wanted to, I promised
start with number 3?
Yeah, I voted for the Heisman. I'm voting the Heisman now for the 35th, 36th straight time since '84. And my top 3 were number 1, Joe Burrow. That's O-W, Joe Burrow. Number 2 was Justin Fields. And number 3 was Chase Young.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that there are great players all over the field in college football that play different positions. And but this idea, and I really have admired the way Chase Young has played, especially this year in the big games, etc. But the reason quarterbacks almost always get the benefit of the doubt, that's not even true. I don't have any doubt.
Yeah.
I think the most important player on any field, on any great team, is the quarterback because he touches the ball every play. But not only that, the thing that's different about a quarterback from a defensive end or a linebacker or a cornerback like Charles Woodson was, he did play some offense too that year when he won it. Mm-hmm. The quarterback, when everything else falls apart on a play, a great quarterback like Joe Burrow and Justin Fields, and you're going to see Trevor Lawrence too coming up in a week and a half, they can still make something happen good for their team. We saw Justin Fields repeatedly the last 3 games of the year pull something out of his hat on third down, even when he was running on a bad leg against Wisconsin. He ran the ball some, but he also, he had some great plays rolling out, getting away from pressure when Ohio State was having trouble handling pressure and stuff. My point is those guys are the ultimate difference makers in big games, and without a doubt, Chase Young is a force on the football field, just like Ndamukong Suh was a force on the football field. But your quarterback scoring points is the ultimate prize, the ultimate goal. And I just think quarterbacks, especially in this age where you ask so much of them to run and throw in college football, that's still the MVP of a team and the MVP usually of the nation, the way I look at it.
Yeah.
And that's why I went with 2 quarterbacks and then defensive end Chase Young. It's no slam at all on Chase Young.
No, it isn't.
He was number 3 on my ballot for the Heisman Trophy. I didn't even have a consideration for him at all when the season started. I thought he was going to maybe run away with a couple of defensive awards. But that's the way I look at it, is the quarterback, all on his own, can avoid rush, avoid tackles, and score a touchdown running the ball if he has to. And that's what sets quarterbacks apart in my mind, because I know there's been a lot of talk going on out there this past week, especially about, A, B, C, and D, they don't even have a chance. Well, they got a chance, but you're not looking at football realistically. And football realistically is the guy with the ball in his hands
is the most important guy.
Is the most important guy on the field, and that's why running backs won it a lot way back when, because that was back when running backs ruled the roost with 25, 35, 40 carries a game. Ricky Williams, for example, Eddie George. But this is a different age now, and I don't know what's your take on that.
I think I came around on this a little bit last couple weeks. I've been, as you know, been talking about this on your show and other shows dating back to September, that Chase Young needed to merit serious consideration. And it was a little bit of a, I wanted to shine a spotlight on him, and I think he deserved it, and it was a dark horse thing.
I agree.
Didn't think that he would win, but I thought getting to New York was an achievement. And
I agree.
I would have thought until, let's say, before the Michigan game or maybe after it, I know the impact of him, but with the stats and, just the way he finished, I knew he wasn't going to win, and it was going to be tougher to put him number 1 ahead of Burrow. And at that point, I was, recognizing or starting to think, what would Ohio State look like if Justin Fields didn't exist?
Yeah.
They would still be very good on defense.
Yes.
Chase Young is special. They would still be probably a pretty good offense, depending on how Matthew Baldwin or Tate Martell, but probably not Tate Martell, depending on how they, or even Chris Chugginoff, how they developed at quarterback. J.K. Dobbins would make them a successful offense and be a little bit more old school than what Ryan Day might have wanted. Justin Fields lived up to that reputation as the highest rated recruit in school history. I thought it would take him some time. It did not. From week 1 through week 13, he changed the ceiling for Ohio State.
Yes.
And even when he was injured. So I had thought all along, if I had a vote, which I haven't since I moved to Ohio, now 8 years without one, so it's easier for me to kind of talk about these candidates maybe throughout the course of it when I know I'm not going to be voting. I thought I would have put Chase Young, if not number 1, because Joe Burrow, I think, deserves that win and earned it, that I would have Chase Young ahead of the other Buckeyes of those 3. But the end of the year really changed my thinking.
Well, you remember what I told you on this podcast, and you and I were just talking too about it. I mean, the last 3 games of the year, in my opinion, the gauntlet they ran were set up to showcase Justin Fields more than Chase Young.
Yeah, it was.
And that's the way it played out. I mean, and when he came back in after getting hurt in that Michigan game, and then scrambled out to the left and threw that touchdown, that was a Heisman moment. He needed about a few more of those, but it didn't happen. But it's funny because Twitter's a weird place.
It is.
I don't know if you noticed that.
I have noticed.
By the way, people said I do this, but that's just the way I touch it too much. That's the way I operate.
It's not like you only do it on camera. So
right. Well, see, I grew up in a house with 3 brothers, and my mom talked a lot and stuff. We were always trying to get the other people's attention, so that's what you did. I think that's what the root of it is. But but the bottom line was, I tweeted something well after the Heisman Trophy ceremony was over, because I thought the right guy won the Heisman Trophy without a doubt. Mm-hmm. But somebody had put up a chart, one of these analytical groups had put up a chart and said these were the quarterbacks with 40 or more touchdown passes in a season, and it rated them, and it was 17. And I looked through it like 7 times. I'm going, wait a minute, there's a guy missing here. His name's Justin Fields, a guy who completed, 202 of 302 passes with 1 interception, has 40 touchdown passes, 50 touchdowns he's responsible for. He's four away from Dwayne Haskins Jr. Big Ten record, obviously Ohio State record of touchdowns responsible for headed into these last two games, possibly. And so I put up this tweet going, wait a minute, what am I missing here? And I gave his stats. And, of course, then the organization put up that tweet.
Disappeared.
Deleted it. Yeah. So everybody thought I was like making some kind of comment about why his stats meant he deserved to win the Heisman over Joe Burrow. And that's not what the case, because Joe Burrow had a season for the ages, man. Yeah. And as far as the SEC is concerned, with all the records he set. And, Joe Burrow played deeper in the games because he had to.
Yep.
Agreed. Justin Fields and J.K. Dobbins' stats would have – J.K. Dobbins probably would have broken 2,000 yards easily.
He's the big loser in that. And,
yeah.
And when I talked to Day outside the theater on Saturday night, he again – he was not trying to take anything away from Joe Burrow. He would never do that.
Yeah.
But he again said, imagine what these guys could have done if they got to play full games.
Right.
And I was saying, this is so great for J.K. He's finished sixth. I'm like, well, he's not going to be happy about it. And you're going to add probably 200 yards at least, maybe 2 or 3 more touchdowns to Dobbins' total. And if you're Fields, I mean, you look at his passing yardage, it's way down there. And they didn't need him to do it.
2,900 yards.
Plus you had J.K. Dobbins. So, that could have easily been different. And I wonder what would have happened if Ohio State's defense had been like 2018 and both of those guys played 4-quarter games.
Exactly.
That race might have been over. The debate might have been who's the winner, Justin Fields or J.K. Dobbins.
Then again, Dwayne Haskins Jr. threw 50 touchdown passes last year.
Well,
of course,
he was. I really think that Dwayne, even finishing third, was.
I voted him number one.
A little bit
year.
of a snub last year.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I voted him number one last year. I thought I just watched the greatest passing season in Ohio State history, in Big Ten history.
Yeah.
That says a lot to me. Justin Fields did not have the greatest passing season or touchdown pass season. Thank you, Dwayne Haskins Jr. So standards go. Now you're going to judge SEC quarterbacks by the Joe Burrow bar. And granted, let's move on from that though. Jeff Hafley. We all knew it was possible. We all knew it was coming. You broke the news. You and John Bryce broke the news late Friday night, ruined a lot of, I think, other sports writers' probably evenings out in New York City. But y'all, once again, Lettermen Row breaks the news on something big. But just what's your take real quick? Hafley going to BC, is that a good call by Jeff Hafley?
I've been on the record for about a week or so that there would be better jobs for Jeff Hafley. I thought that, especially early last week, that there was some momentum that he would pass on that and wait for a better opportunity, spend another year making $1 million with the Buckeyes, and then see what happened a year from now. I think Martin Jarman came back with a little bit more financial commitment and help for the support staff and everything else, and that won him over. We'll see. I think Boston College, in my estimation, is a pretty average to below average job, and I wouldn't want it. Now I would take the salary.
I would say average because they've had some success in
I think
as John Cooper used to say, you take when you go for a job, you take the press guide and you look through and forget about everything else in the press guide. You look through the results section, and they've had some decent seasons. Let's put it that way. Some really good seasons.
Yeah, but it's so much has been made about Haffley's recruiting ties in the Northeast. Well, that's not exactly the greatest place to go recruit anyway. Even if you're good at
number one and number two, you're going to have to leave the Northeast to have
if you're going to win
to go get some players.
If you're going to,
I'm with you.
If you're going to knock Clemson off of the top spot, you're not going to do it by recruiting the Northeast.
Yeah,
you're alone.
Yeah.
So even if he has success there, Boston College is not just fighting anymore against other teams in the Northeast. He's going to be competing directly against Ohio State. If he's going back into New Jersey, Greg Schiano's there now, and he's going to try and keep some of those prospects in the state.
Oh, yeah.
It's a tough –
the battle has been joined.
I just think Boston College is a tough place to win. He can get them to a bowl game every year, but they just showed when they got rid of Steve Adazio that that's no longer good enough for them, that they have higher aspirations than winning 7 games, and that's fine. But you need to also understand how difficult that can be annually at Boston College. When this happened with Chris Ash at Rutgers, or whether it's happened for Jeff Hafley right now. Jeff Hafley is a great coach, and I think he has a chance to succeed. And I don't fault anyone for taking a guaranteed $10 or $15 million payday and being set for the rest of your life, especially if you're a great defensive coordinator, and as Chris Ash is proving right now, that you can get right back in the profession down the road. But I
knew there was a but coming.
I thought there would be a better opportunity for him. That's his call.
Yeah. Well, here's the way. I mean, I look at it. I'm gonna have Birminology on here to talk about obviously I don't know if it's early signing day. This is actually the real signing day
really
anymore.
Is now,
and the one in February is the adjunct.
Bonus, yeah,
the adjunct signing day to maybe add a couple of guys. But I'm going to talk to him about just a little touch on that a little bit about
he has some thoughts about
the struggle, the challenge of recruiting to the Northeast in any kind of football program. But I digress. The thing about Haffley, and this, man, he won the interview. I mean,
for sure.
This guy, and he can think on his feet like few people. I mean, here I am stammering, hemming and hawing. I've got a podcast going, right? But he can think on his feet like few people. He won the interview, and it reminds me of when Walt Harris took the Pitt job. He was the offensive coordinator. He was a quarterback's coach, passing game coordinator, and co-offensive coordinator at Ohio State, and he took the Pitt job, I think it was in 97, the year after Ohio State won the Rose Bowl. And, he had kind of revamped the Ohio State passing game, gave a new way of thinking, et cetera. I think when he showed up in 94 or 95, I think it was 95. And talk about showing up when there are bright red apples on the tree. That's what he did, But bottom line is, he told me in taking the Pitt job is you could schedule 3 wins. They were in the Big East then. Mm-hmm. He said then you had Temple and Rutgers on your schedule. So that's 5 wins. You can almost immediately have. All you got to do is beat one other team.
And you're in.
You're not supposed to maybe, or you're even with, and you're in a bowl game. And then his point was it was a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Do you see this? Here's the thing about Boston College. We're sitting here, and Dabo Swinney's been pulling his hair out about why his team is deserving, but the reason people are saying your team isn't as deserving as others this year is because of the league you're in.
Exactly.
So Haffley is going to a league where I think you can make hay in a couple 3 years pretty quickly.
Yeah, you're right about that. And if he can go 8-4 a couple times.
Wait, let me interrupt. Boston College is in the Atlantic Coast Conference, ladies and gentlemen.
Think about it.
Yeah.
If he can go 8-4 a couple times, he's still going to have an opportunity to get a bigger job, and maybe he's just really ready to get into it. I don't think Jeff Hafley's his head coaching career is going to end at Boston College. And if he wins at a really high level, which still I think the ceiling is 9 wins. I don't see Boston College as ever being an ACC championship caliber, and maybe Jeff Hafley will prove me wrong on that front. That's just my take on that place and their limitations with their roster. We'll see what Jeff.
The first guy to congratulate Joe Burrow after he made his stirring speech the other night was Doug Flutie, 1984 Heisman Trophy winner from Boston College. Yeah. Go ahead now.
Well, but again, think how much college football has changed since 1984.
Hey, but you get a damn good quarterback, man.
I'm not here to pile on Boston College.
I know.
And I love Jeff Hafley, and I go back to I don't remember we turned to each other. Was that his first press conference on signing day in February?
Yeah.
And we said,
damn.
That
I think my exact quote was damn.
I wrote as soon as we left there, that was just like Ryan Day's first press conference.
Yes.
That guy's got it.
Yes.
You don't always know how to describe it, but you knew he was going to be a head coach someday.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to wait, and that's absolutely fine. As Birm will say later on in your podcast, the timing's not ideal for a couple of perspectives, but that doesn't matter. It's going to happen, and the way the recruiting calendar in the college football playoff works now, if you're an elite program, you're going to deal with this every year. Clemson is doing the same thing with Jeff Scott heading out. Both programs in this game are having to deal with the same thing. Alabama, when they're in there, Kirby Smart, Lane Kiffin. This is just the way it works.
Yeah, Clemson's losing Jeff Scott. Well,
yeah. And that's it.
Yeah.
It happened with Tom Herman. It happened with Luke Fickell. Those guys can still do their job. Tom Herman used it as a recruiting tool while he poured everything into it.
Yeah.
And didn't sleep for 4 or 5 weeks. I did a story with Luke Fickell when he was making the transition and going down to Cincinnati, sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night while trying to hire a staff and recruit and still giving everything you have to your current job. Jeff Hafley can do that. I don't have any doubt about it. He's going to be really, really freaking tired.
Yeah.
But if you think he's not going to show up to coach in the Fiesta Bowl, think again.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just like, but of course, Nick Saban told, Lane Kiffin to take a hike.
I don't think Lane Kiffin is as focused as Jeff Hafley.
Yeah. Well, you never know.
That's just my hot take. I've covered both of them.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Well, but like you said, Ryan Day lives in this world. He understands the allure of being a head coach somewhere. Do you turn it down just for so you can concentrate for 3 weeks? You can't do that.
No.
These jobs, there's only 130 of them in major college football, and really, it's Power 5. There's only how many Power 5 schools? 75 or something like that. You don't turn it down when it comes knocking.
Right.
Real quick, who do they replace him with? Obviously, Chris Ash has been gobbled up now by Texas, and Tom Herman, who's revamping almost his entire staff.
There was a conversation between Ryan Day and Chris Ash, I believe early Saturday, touched base on that. I don't think that Day anticipated that was ever going to be a fit.
Yeah.
But the guy's available and he has the experience. I was told by some people, I didn't remember this, but Ash was really involved in a round before the Rose Bowl last year, even though he was still working with Rutgers.
Yeah.
Gave some feedback there. So he continued to have ties to Ohio State, but I don't need to dive any further into that because he's not coming. The guy, there could be a return. We'll see what Kerry Coombs wants to do. Ohio State is 100% on board and all in to try and bring him back. There have already been phone calls going back and forth there. The support of the administration all the way up to Gene Smith is on board. It's what Lettermen Row sources are telling us, that whatever the financial commitment needs to be to get him back from the Tennessee Titans, they will do it. So the ball is going to be in Kerry Coombs' court. They want him to be involved. They want him to take the job, but they're also looking into how quickly, while he's still working for the Titans and while Jeff Hafley is on staff, they could have him working the phones as a recruiter.
Yeah.
That's how far along and how confident they are at this point. These things you've covered this for a long, long time, so have I. These things, even when they look like they're done or close, a million things can still happen.
Of course, yeah.
But right now, all attention is on Kerry Coombs.
Yeah. Real quick, because I got Birminology waiting in the wings, and
he's warming up.
No, I think he's putting more gas into his tank because we've been talking so much.
Well, you didn't have the clock out.
Is this the last
Sorry.
Ohio State, in your opinion, the last Ohio State assistant to leave the roost from this 2019 coaching staff? Are the other 9 going to be back in 2020?
I think there's a possibility that the movement is not done.
And who are you looking at there?
I think that there is an opportunity.
Wait a minute, drum roll, please.
Well, there's a number of things. I don't want to ruin anyone's aspirations, but if Boston College and Jeff Hafley want to make Washington an offer to be a defensive coordinator,
Al Washington Jr.
Yeah, that Al Washington Jr. Then that could be an option. After the disappointment for Tony Alford not getting the Colorado State job, he's got to look and make a decision about what he wants to do with his career. And I've had this conversation with him, as a number of people have. He's making, I think, $600,000 to be a running backs coach at Ohio State. It is a great job. He wants to be a head coach someday, and when he came up short against Colorado State, this is the second time it's happened to him. That's his alma mater. The message he gets good feedback on it because he knows the people there, and they say, you haven't been a coordinator before. I don't know. That's going to be a choice he has to make. There's still places around the country trying to fill out a staff. Does he want to make that leap because he wants to be a head coach, or does he stay at Ohio State because he's comfortable and he's got a great job? I think that's most likely what I expect, but I don't want to say 100% that there's no more changes coming, because there's still going to be more dominoes falling. You don't typically see this ever happening for Ohio State now. You don't have guys leaving for lateral jobs, lateral moves, trying to add titles. You're either going to be nudged out the door, or you're going to be a head coach somewhere.
Yeah.
So I would tend to think Al Washington and Tony Alford would still be on Ohio State's staff throughout this recruiting process into next year. But they will be thinking about what they want their career to look like.
And by the way, you left out one other caveat, or an NFL type job.
Right.
I mean,
because that's what happened with Kerry Coombs.
Yeah, exactly. And Mike Vrabel, for example. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Boston, you call him Austin Ward. Thanks for coming on once again. I mean, I really enjoy these talks with Boston because, as you know, he is quite tuned in to the Ohio State frequency when it comes to covering things that are going on.
Well, you sharpen it for me. And that's
comings and goings from the Ohio State University football program. And once again, I enjoyed your coverage of the Heisman Trophy stuff over the weekend in New York City. You took a real big bite out of the Big Apple, and we always appreciate that. You know, we're going to come back in a moment after a word from our sponsor, and I'm going to have on the inimitable Jeremy Birmingham. You know him as Birminology. I know him as Frenchie now, but we're going to talk, like I said, signing day is this week. The real signing day is this week. Boy, have things changed in college football. But we're also going to delve a little bit into, the dynamics of that. And also, for example, here's Jeff Hafley. He's a brand new head coach at Boston College. Man, he really better get on the phone, right?
Get moving.
Homina. Wow. I mean, think about that. You're trying to build a program, and you pretty much have lost.
You lost
this
the entire
year.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure how many guys they were going to sign in this early date, because a lot of these schools kind of stick around to that second time after the
5 stars.
Flotsam and Jetsam has fallen from some of the other major schools around the country, and they pick up the next stuff.
Right.
But we'll be back in a moment to talk with Jeremy Birmingham, like I said, par excellence when it comes to recruiting, right after this.
Hey, college football fans, it's Zach Bourne here. You need to check out BetDSI.com. BetDSI is a great way to use your sports knowledge to make some extra cash. That's right. BetDSI is the top-rated online sportsbook. They've been paying winners for over 20 years. The reason they've been around that long is because they have got the fastest payouts in the industry. Plus, the user interface and mobile site is the best in the business. Play, win, and get paid. It's that simple. It doesn't matter if it's college football, the NFL, NBA, NHL, UFC, esports, reality TV, virtually anything. You can bet it. You can bet on it at BetDSI.com and get paid right now. There's no better way to add some excitement to games that you already are watching. Check out their live betting, where you can bet on games throughout the entire matchup, every play, and every minute until the end. BetDSI has a special deal for Lettermen Row fans. Use the promo code ROW100 to get a 100% bonus match. That's more than double. That's right, more than double your money to start winning today. Once again, go to BetDSI.com and use promo code ROW100 and get this limited 100% bonus offer to make some extra cash on the sports you know and love. BetDSI promo code ROW100. Now back to the show.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're back, and joining me now is Jeremy Birmingham.
Oof, a little magic trick.
Actually, his nickname's not Birminology. That's more of his calling, right? Is a Birminology.
I mean, that's just happens to rhyme with terminology, and my name is Birm.
Yeah.
And then so I just combined the two in some sort of magic word salad.
A potion.
A delicious word salad.
A potion. I know you now as Frenchie because of the way you admire the way I pronounce Javante Jean-Baptiste.
Oui. That's actually because of the way that Austin pronounces Nicolas Petit Frere.
Yeah, Frere.
I took 2 years of French in high school, so I know it's Frere. And there's not a lot of things that I know more than Austin, but I do know French.
I bet he says aluminium too. What do you think? Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
But of course, we both digress. This 2020 class. I mean, Jack Miller's been committed since what?
18 months, June of 2018.
No, but I was going to make something funnier than that.
I don't believe in humor.
Exactly.
Tim. Fun is not in my DNA.
A lot of these guys were recruited by Urban Meyer to begin with and stuff. Just what impresses you most about this 2020 class, which signs on Wednesday? That's my opinion, the real signing day now. You agree, right?
I mean, unfortunately, it is the December.
But it was expected too, right?
Yeah, the December signing period is turned into signing day. It's not. It's a 3-day window that everyone, you can sign on Friday if you want, but everyone will sign on Wednesday.
Right.
I think it speaks to the fact that a lot of these kids really hate this process because if even 2 years ago, it was always, I'm going to wait till February to make my decision, blah, blah. But like now it's like, I can make it earlier? Sweet. Let me get this over with ASAP. And that's great for the kids in a lot of situations. It's also terrible for the kids who are 3-star prospects around the country who are being forced into a signing day situation with classes, that maybe they're waiting for a bigger offer, that maybe they would get it in January if they wait, but they're playing this game.
Yeah.
And then you have...
They're not the only ones playing the game.
No, I mean, the schools are obviously doing that as well, and the schools are putting the kids in a position. The kids are putting the schools in a position where they're saying, hey, if I don't sign now, I'm not signing. You have what you and Austin talked about with Jeff Hafley, situations like that. I don't believe Jeff Hafley, if he had his druthers, would have chosen to have this information come out right now. But Boston College had to have this information come out right now. Boston College had to be able to tell its recruits, hey, we have a coach. This is who it is. But, today, we're filming this on Monday, right? 2 days before the signing day period begins. It's a recruiting dead period. None of these kids that are going to sign with Boston College on Wednesday can meet Jeff Hafley unless he happened to be on campus with them on Saturday or Sunday in Boston. So it's a really weird situation. I don't love the early signing period for a lot of reasons. I personally think there should be an early signing period in like August and then February as opposed to December, February, because this makes no sense.
But not only that, but I look at Ohio State. It's not even, it's barely a week removed from the Big Ten championship game. I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking, putting myself in Ryan Day's head right now. It must be like being like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz when the tornado just picked up the house. Yeah, I mean, crazy.
Yeah. Spencer and I talked about that on Talking Stuff last week. And I think that there needs to be some sort of concession made by the NCAA when it comes to teams playing in a conference championship game to say, hey, we're going to give you 3 days back because Ohio State lost an entire week of recruiting.
Right.
And all of a sudden, those extra couple days where Ryan Day could have sat down and talked to somebody in person may be pretty helpful if he could have those today and tomorrow to fly out to California and talk to Clark Phillips or somebody who's concerned about Jeff Hafley's departure. So, there's a loss of time, and people may see it and say, "Oh, well, that's only 1 week. Who cares?"
Maybe that's the NCAA's way of trying to create parity. It handicap the real big time, overachieving schools.
Yeah, because the Buckeyes.
I'm just joking.
No,
of course.
The Buckeyes lose that week. And,
they do.
And that's you now have a reason. Like, what would the value of that getting those couple days back be?
Yeah.
And you're looking at that today because Ryan Day having the opportunity to go back out west and talk to Lathan Ransom and talk to Clark Phillips and go back to Muskegon.
Birm, let me interrupt you there, though.
Please do, because I will ramble.
You're Ohio State. You're playing in the college football playoff. You've just won your third straight Big Ten championship. What do you have to say to those guys that you haven't already said to them that would convince them that, man, if you show up at Ohio State, you got a chance to really – I mean, they just had two guys at the Heisman Trophy finals.
It's a great question. They have, 4 Buckeyes in the top 6 of the Heisman, essentially.
Right.
But, maybe there's an opportunity for Ryan Day in a living room to be on a phone call with a potential coaching replacement who happens to be on speakerphone and talking to Ryan. I mean, there's opportunities for phone calls to be made and ways for the Buckeyes to put forward, like, hey, this is our plan. And right now, this is the thing. I know you and Austin talked about the Haffley thing extensively, but the reason this timing is so bad, there are 14 kids in the Ohio State class of 2020 who are planning on enrolling early at Ohio State in just 3 weeks, right?
14, man.
3 of those guys are defensive backs who've been committed to Jeff Hafley for a year, 6 months. Their entire future was banking on walking into Columbus on January 7th or 8th and being coached by Jeff Hafley, even though they all knew it was probably only going to be for 1 year, right?
Yes.
So that's the other thing. The Buckeyes are saying, hey, you knew he was going to be here only 1 more year. Why is this a big deal? But it is a big deal to kids who are packing up their lives and moving across the country.
Because it's not only the kids, but it's the moms and dads, it's the coaches that they play for who can point to like how the Ohio State defensive secondary, for example, is ridiculous how it's flipped from a year ago at this time. I'm surprised they even signed anybody a year ago at this time. But I mean, the way the secondary played in a lot of respects, the way the defense played.
And it's this conversation point that people on Twitter, the social media world, will constantly harp on it and say, "Oh, you're supposed to be committing to a school, not a coach."
That is the way they sound, by the way. The
right?
people that say that.
Yeah, that is that's social media guy voice.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Hey, buddy, you're supposed to commit to a school, not a coach, buddy.
Yeah, well, unless they get somebody from somewhere else.
Right, but here's the deal: like the coach that you're talking to for that entire year.
Yeah.
Is the coach you're talking to for that entire year.
Exactly.
So, and here's an area where Ryan Day, people ask a lot of questions about the difference between Urban Meyer and Ryan Day. One area where Ryan Day's approach is significantly different than Urban Meyer is that Ryan Day has been very involved with each of these recruits since they committed, okay?
Yeah.
Whereas Urban, towards the end of his tenure especially, really didn't get involved until it was signing day. Or until there was a oops, I crapped my pants moment, right? Like oh no, bad things are coming. Let's get the boss man involved, right?
Yeah.
Ryan Day has been intimately involved in getting to know the kids, getting to know their families, their aunts, their girlfriend's name, their dog name and genus, whatever. You know? So he's a little different than Urban in that respect, and I think that's why, as Buckeye fans are freaking out over the weekend after Haffley, that's why 4 of those 5 defensive backs that have committed are already saying, hey, I'm fine, things are good, I'm signing on Wednesday, and then we have the Clark Phillips uncertainty, but that's the one.
Yeah. Well, let's move forward now because we know most of these guys, like you say, are signing. The 2 guys I've really got my eye on, well, I got my eye on a bunch of these guys, but Jack Miller has been out, like we said. The quarterback is a big signee.
Yeah, absolutely.
My big question is where would Jack Miller be 3 years from now with the portal as it is,
That is the question because Jack Miller obviously
crazy, man.
Yeah, and he's likely not to be the only quarterback in this class. And that's where things get really interesting this week for Ohio State and for Georgia and Michigan and anybody else trying to sign C.J. Stroud, the second-ranked quarterback in the country. He's going to announce on Wednesday where he's going, and he spent his weekend in Columbus making his final official visit to Ohio State. I think the Buckeyes are going to sign him, and so
that's why Ryan Day jetted to New York and jetted back.
Yeah, I mean, C.J. Stroud is making his visit, and Ryan Day has to leave after spending Friday night worrying about the Jeff Hafley stuff. Ryan Day then had to leave. So if you want to know the power of Ohio State, if C.J. Stroud ends up signing with the Buckeyes after all that, it's a pretty good indicator that the program is in pretty good shape. But Jack Miller is a player that has been a lightning rod. He has very ardent defenders, and he has a lot of people who think that he is overhyped and overrated and can't stay healthy. And I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of both. I don't know.
Well, I think he got banged up. I mean, the video I've watched of him when he's playing, he can play, man.
Jack is a really, really excellent passer.
He can flat play,
And I know that Ryan Day first saw him in the summer of 2017. And he kind of instantly catapulted up the board and became like that guy because they already had their 2018, 2019 ideas of where they were going.
Yeah.
And Jack Miller, just the way that he throws the football, if he has time to throw, which, in the college game, you hope you can keep your quarterback upright. He did not have that luxury at Chaparral High School in Scottsdale, Arizona this year. He was running around like a chicken with his head cut off most of the time.
Right, like a chaparral.
Whatever that is. And what is a chaparral?
You know what? I knew you were going to call me on that. I thought chaparral was like a little. Maybe
Tim doesn't know what a chaparral is.
Maybe I'm thinking Roadrunner. Because Angelina College, where I first went to college in Lufkin, Texas, was the Roadrunners. But I think it's a little.
Let's just assume
a wingless bird or flightless bird.
Let's just assume. I mean, their nickname is the Firebirds. So I don't know that they would be the bird Firebirds.
Yeah,
that wouldn't make sense.
But
let's just assume that Tim doesn't know what a chaparral is.
Yeah, I don't. I thought I did, and all of a sudden I drew a blank. But you got to remember, ladies and gentlemen,
did anybody ever think about what would happen if you and I were on a show by ourselves?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm 65 years old.
Not a chaparral.
I'm 65 years old. I've got my excuse. Go ahead now.
I personally think Jack Miller can play at Ohio State. I think that the Buckeyes have known for a while what he can do if he's healthy and protected. So the fact that the Buckeyes are chasing another quarterback in this class is not an indictment of Jack Miller at all. It is simply a matter of numbers in Columbus. And
yes,
a byproduct of the fact that Ohio State is one of the 2 or 3 best college football programs in America, and they are not going to intentionally recruit a player who sucks or who they don't think can compete with Jack Miller for a starting quarterback job eventually, because if they're going to do that, they may as well just skip and wait till the transfer portal. So
yeah, they've been down that route.
Right, they're going to aim high. They're going to go after a guy that they think can beat out Jack Miller, and if Jack wants to be there for that, great, and he's shown that he wants to, and he's signing on Wednesday, and he's enrolling early. But if C.J. Stroud does pick Ohio State, he's also enrolling early, and so all of a sudden, for Buckeye fans who are looking for some reason to watch the spring game next year, the idea of Jack Miller and C.J. Stroud head-to-head for most of the day while Justin Fields and Gunnar Hoke hold a clipboard will sure be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sure will. Who passed, the quarterback, obviously the big quarterback question, but Paris Johnson, for example, who are the guys in this group? Give me like 3 or 4 that that you think maybe not are instant hits, but will be hits as this thing develops.
Well, I mean, I can just give you 4 right away.
Yeah.
And they're wide receivers, right? So all 4 of those wide receivers should be. I mean, you're talking about 3 of the top 10 receivers in the country.
Yes.
In Julian Fleming, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and G. Scott. Then you have Mookie Cooper, who is a top 15 player at his position. Did not play his senior year of high school, and so his rating kind of took a dip. But he's a Rondale Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson type player that Ohio State has not had in a couple years. And I think they wanted that kind of guy this year. It's certainly a player that Urban Meyer would have loved to coach. But those 4. All of them are enrolling early, which, again, is just another sign of how much college football is changing, right? Like,
yes,
all 4 of these dudes are going to be on campus in 3 weeks. Julian Fleming, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and G. Scott and Mookie Cooper are coming into a wide receiver room, and it reminds me a ton of 2014 when Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin and Johnny Dixon were all there. That group is going to play off each other and really sort of be the barometer for success at Ohio State in the next 3 years. But we can talk about those guys. They're all 5-star potential players. Paris Johnson, obviously, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to be in the 2 deep as a true freshman. That he, again, enrolling early. Luke Whippler, who's enrolling early at the offensive line, I think is in a different spot because he's an interior guy, and the inside of the line should be a little bit deeper than the tackle situation. Trey LaRue is also enrolling early. He is a project, but the earlier he can get on campus and start getting his body changed by Mick Marotti, the better. Don't expect him to make an impact next year. But nobody expected DeJuan Jones to make an impact this year. And here he was playing 4 games.
I thought first day of preseason practice, I thought, man, there's a project there.
And while Ryan Jacoby didn't play at all for the Buckeyes this year. So you just never really know. But, outside of those guys, the other guys are the defensive backs. And that's why I don't want to keep circling back to it, but that's why this Haffley deal is so important because this is a secondary that is going to lose Jeff Okudah, Damon Arnett, Sean Wade, Jordan Fuller. Jordan Fuller. You're losing all your starters. You're losing your top guns in the secondary.
Yeah.
And
they got Josh Proctor back, though.
And I've heard that you're a fan.
I just like the way the guy plays.
Josh Proctor is a guy that Ohio State, one of the reasons why you need to get a replacement coach in here ASAP, because this is 3 years, 3 coaches. Sean Wade's 4 years, 4 coaches if he were to return. Yeah. Like that kind of instability, it doesn't matter how good the program is for the kids inside of the program. Like we can all sit on the outside and say, oh, well, look, they're winning games, they're in the playoff, they're 3 straight Big Ten championships, blah, blah, blah. These kids need somebody to develop them and guide them, and it is extremely frustrating for them to continue to have these coaches come and go. So, all
right, now narrow this one down to 1 because you're kind of like Boston Ward.
Oh, I like to talk to you.
Sometimes. I mean, I need I don't need the Jim Trussell answer. I need the.
I never give a Jim Trussell answer.
See, who would I say I need the answer from? I don't know. Few people are succinct anymore. What was the biggest Bill Belichick answer? There we go. No, I don't want that either.
No.
I actually want a response.
I'm on to Cincinnati.
Yeah. What of this whole group that signed Wednesday or signing on Wednesday? What is the biggest victory they had over another big time program to sign him? Don't give me 3, give me 1.
I mean, it's got to be Julian Fleming. I mean, you're talking about the best receiver in the country.
Yeah.
ESPN's top-ranked player in the country, a top 5 player across everyone's board. Grew up an hour from Penn State, was down to Ohio State, Clemson, Penn State, Georgia, Alabama. And Brian Hartline won a battle that Ohio State has just not been winning.
That was a setup because I wanted to ask you. I mean,
why didn't you just ask me about Julian Fleming, Tim?
Well, no, I was wanted to ask you about Brian Hartline.
Look at that.
Have you seen a fellow? I mean, obviously, you've got to be able to recruit. Jeff Hafley's proven he can recruit. He was out of college for 7 years, I think it was, but before he came back. But clearly, this guy has a lot of intelligence, smarts, moxie, and also the ability to put words together. But is Brian Hartline? How has he impressed you on the recruiting trail?
I'm going to say something here, and it's going to be profound, and you maybe never heard this before. But
okay, wait a minute. Hang on. All right, go.
You win with people. I just coined that term. And Brian Hartline.
I feel like I'm watching Watchmen.
Brian Hartline's an interesting guy because he is like a chameleon. And, he's one of those guys that fits the when in Rome, do as the Romans. He is very comfortable living the South Florida life that he did when he was down in Miami. Yes. And probably dancing the Cubano. Is that a dance?
I don't know. Probably not. It sounds more like something you
Is that a sandwich?
No, it sounds more like a cigar.
The merengue.
Yeah.
Brian Hartline is just as comfortable listening to Pitbull as he is listening to Florida Georgia Line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't. Does anybody?
He's a chameleon. I mean, he literally can roll with whatever.
Yeah, and that is huge in recruiting, especially when you're 33 or 34 years old, however old he is. Especially when you played 7 years in the NFL. Especially when you played at the school that you're recruiting for. Especially when you grew up in the state of the school that you're recruiting for. Like, this is a guy that checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and some of that is salesmanship. Some of that's the ability to sell yourself. Some of that's the ability to point to a result and say, hey, this is what I've already done. Be a part of this or don't. I don't care. I'm moving on without you. And one thing that Jeff Hafley showed, and Brian Hartline has shown even before Hafley arrived and will continue to show, is that what recruits really want is someone succinct. They want someone who just gets to the point,
right,
tells them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear, because these kids are smart enough now with social media to deal with, to figure out who's just gaming them and who is actually being real with them. And I think that's what Hartline really has proven to be his strength, which is there is no BS with him.
You covered recruiting for a long time. What is it when you get into that? Like I said, we were talking earlier about what else does Ryan Day need to tell you to convince you to show up at Ohio State? I was being facetious to a certain extent. But what is it that, in your opinion, makes that final decision for a kid? Meaning, what is it that convinces them that
cool uniforms?
Alabama is the place, because Alabama can only sign 25. Well, he's
Yeah, come on, Alabama can sign as many as they
want. But I mean, what is it in your mind that convinces them this is the school I want to go to?
Spencer and I.
How much does it come down to whimsy?
Spencer, almost never. I mean, that's the thing. There's this idea that everyone is different, right? But that's BS. These kids pretty much, if you're a top-tier football player in high school, you're pretty much the same as every top-tier football player in the last 20 years.
Exactly.
You're all looking for the same thing, which is winning games, winning championships, a chance to be developed and pushed onto the NFL.
An opportunity.
An opportunity to be something after football. Ohio State in the last handful of years has capitalized like nobody else ever has on the idea of life after football, and that's what they sell these kids. But there's a very key word in there, and that's after football, because football is still the most important piece of the puzzle. So, for the Buckeyes, the goal here is always, and Spencer and I have created this little acronym CAR, right? Comfort and relationships. That is it, always. And that's why if Ohio State does end up losing someone like Clark Phillips from this class by Wednesday, it's because there is now a lack of comfort in relationships. There's a lack of relationships with who his position coach would be. There may be some discomfort not knowing if they can trust Ohio State or Ryan Day, because maybe they were told, hey, Hafley's not going anywhere. We have no idea what was said in the living room last week when Hafley's out and visiting California.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, oh, this kid shouldn't be upset or shouldn't be bothered, because if Jeff Hafley sat there in his living room and said, I'm not leaving anywhere, I'll see you in 2 weeks when you arrive on campus, and then all of a sudden 24 hours later it's like, oh, Jeff Hafley's going to
You mean the Stan Drayton effect?
Right, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And we can generalize and say that, oh, kids should understand this is part of the business, but
yeah,
it doesn't matter. Like, so people in relationships cheat all the time, right? Doesn't mean it feels good if it happens to you.
I don't cheat.
Right.
I've never cheated.
I'm saying, like, it's a common thing.
People in relationships don't all cheat all the time.
It's a common thing. It happens all over the world.
Yeah.
But if it happens to you,
I just wanted to be on the record there.
If it happens to you, it still hurts, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter.
It happened to me way back when I was dating.
Are you okay?
I recovered from it. I got married.
Did it hurt?
No, it was great.
It did?
No, I learned from it. What doesn't kill you?
Right.
Norm Macdonald said, what doesn't kill you can still hurt you really bad. That's a good line. But
that's what we're seeing. We're seeing kids get hurt, and it's really about comfort in relationships, and ultimately that always drives a recruitment, and
I'm sure it does.
Always will be the deciding factor.
If they get Kerry Coombs, let's say, because Boston was talking about this earlier, if in fact they lure Kerry Coombs back to the fold, so to speak,
sure.
How much does that help? How much, in your opinion, he was a go-get-'em recruiter.
Oh, yeah.
Does that salve the wound?
I mean, if the wound has to be salved by Wednesday. So
it's not going to happen. We're talking down the road.
That's the problem.
People may be listening to this 3 weeks later.
If Kerry Coombs ends up being back into the fold with the Buckeyes, certainly his reputation as a recruiter, as a talent developer, I mean, he's the guy that helped produce Marshawn Lattimore and Marcus Hooker or Malik. He recruited Marcus, Malik Hooker and Eli Apple and Garyon Conley and all these guys, right? Like, his reputation speaks for itself. He now has the NFL work on his resume, so his resume is actually better than it was when he came from being a high school coach in Cincinnati.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like
yes.
So you think about how well he recruited when that was all he had. Hey, I'm Kerry. I coached at Coleraine. Okay, neat.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
So he had to go out and earn it. Obviously, it's important to Ryan Day that he's the guy. I mean, that's from the minute everything happened on Friday night with Jeff Hafley. The name was Kerry Coombs. Like, that's it. So I think it's important not just for the recruiting standpoint, but it's also important for Ryan Day to be able to prove that he can get his guy.
Yeah.
And because this is a harbinger of things to come.
And not only that, but now he can brag that you're going to be being coached by a guy who's been in the NFL for a couple of seasons.
And this is a harbinger of things to come.
Yes.
Like, every year, Ohio State coaches are going to leave. So Ryan Day has to be able to do what Urban Meyer did and prove, hey, I can go out and get a guy. I can go out and get a dude to replace the dude that left.
I want to tell you, man, the toughest thing that major college head coaches do every year, though, is not recruiting. It's recruiting is tough.
Yeah, it's recruiting a new coach.
It's replacing coaches. I remember when Shelley Meyer, was worried after the 2014 season. I wrote a story about it, about how Urban Meyer had changed and things from his Florida days, but going into those playoffs in 2014. But the biggest thing he was going to face is how is he going to replace Tom Herman, who had been a hit. And Tom Herman was going to be moving on after those playoffs. And you saw, man, Ohio State went through a little bit of a rocky road there.
It did not go well replacing Tom Herman. But
exactly.
It went pretty well when you had to replace Mike Vrabel.
You may have a little list on a little pullout thing. You may have a list of guys you want, but that doesn't mean you're going to get them. And number two, that doesn't mean the guy that you end up getting is going to be a fit. So, the great thing, if they can lure Kerry Coombs back into the fold, is they know what he brings to the table. And it's dynamism. And a lot of other things.
It's when you lose Mike Vrabel after the 2013 season, and he's at that time the most popular recruiter on the staff far and away, even ahead of Kerry Coombs at that time. And then you replace him with Larry Johnson.
Yeah, that
sometimes you replace Tom Herman with not.
But think about the happenstance. Think about the circumstance. It's like when Ohio State replaced. Luke Fickell was the interim coach, but Urban Meyer sitting out there without a job, And
sometimes you have to get lucky.
Yeah, you do have to get lucky.
Sometimes you have to have.
Larry Johnson was ready to leave Penn State because they passed him over as a viable candidate for the head coaching job after all that turmoil over there, and he was ready to move on and do other things.
Sometimes you need luck. Sometimes you need an administration willing to to go on the line and put the money out there, and that's what they're going to need for Kerry Coombs because there's a lot of reasons to stay coaching in the NFL.
All right, real quick, this is my last question for you, and I always want a two-word answer.
Okay.
Who will be the most impactful player? This is you forecasting. We'll all be chuckling about this in 3 years probably when we call this.
I can't give you a two-word
answer. We'll call this podcast
because
back
my
up.
two-word answer is so contingent on Clark Phillips signing on Wednesday.
Oh, there you go.
Clark Phillips is the most important defensive recruit in this class, and Clark Phillips is the one recruit that we don't know if he's going to sign at this point. So.
Yeah. Well, see, move past that. I mean, because this has to have some shelf life. This is like Campbell's soup cans up in the
taking you behind
in
the scenes, folks.
Pantry. Give me one other guy that could have the biggest impact. Could be 3 years from now. People are talking about him. Wow, I remember when he signed on signing day. I knew this guy was going to be great.
Paris Johnson.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's about as succinct as it get, and it is unbelievable to me that the guy called Frenchie picked a guy named Paris as his most impactful possible player other than Clark Phillips, if in fact Clark Phillips signed with this class.
I believe it's Clark Felipe.
But we'll be back next week, ladies and gentlemen, as Ohio State really zeroes in on Clemson. Its opponent in the college football playoff semifinals in Phoenix. I'm looking forward to covering that game, as well as Birminology here. Jeremy Birmingham, I call him Frenchie. Glue Man, and, of course, Boston, you call him Austin Ward. Lettermen Row is going to have you covered just like it always does with scoops, etc., and then game day coverage. Does Ohio State move on? It's going to be interesting. Ohio State right now is an underdog in the game. We'll see how that goes. But until next week, this is Tim May. Thanks for watching the Tim May Podcast.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Birm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.